What's going on, everybody? It's Max here, and today I'm bringing you a video series that I've probably been requested more than anything else
I'm gonna play and watch some tutorials at the same time because notice that I forgot a lot of stuff, basics. So let's go.
have ever made on Twitch over the last 3 years, and that is my total beginner's tutorial for the 4X strategy game Stellaris, made by Paradox Interactive. We've been part of Stellaris events for the last 3 years or so, basically since I first started on Twitch 3 years ago. And they have most recently actually asked me to produce a really quick beginner's tutorial that ran on the Stellaris Steam page so that people could see what the game is all about and get a good head start. I did about 30 minutes there, and it wasn't enough to cover everything that there is in the game. So this marks the very first episode of a multi-part tutorial series for the game, updated all the way to the Overlord DLC. If you want to see more Stellaris gameplay outside of this tutorial, you can join us on Twitch, where I stream the game, and we try out a bunch of different strategies, a bunch of different empires, and I talk through, similarly to what you're going to see in this video, basically everything that we're doing. You're free to ask questions, and don't forget, you can ask questions down in the comments below as we go through it. I'm going to do my best to explain as much as I possibly can about the game over the next few episodes, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's just jump right into it. Let's click New Game. And let's just choose one of our empires. Let's even take one of the base empires that comes in the game. Maybe the Commonwealth of Man. They're a little bit more, let's do the United Nations of Earth. They're a little bit friendlier, a little bit nicer. And press next. And I'm just going to jump into a base game with the base settings. All right. So when you first start the game, there is a lot on the screen. It's a little bit overwhelming, but I'm going to orient you to everything that's going on. In the very center, we have Earth. This is our home planet. It's the first planet that we've ever colonized, the only planet that humans have colonized, but we have space travel ability now, and we can go out and take other stars and gather and expand our galactic empire from now on. Earth, of course, orbits the sun, which we have in the center of this star system here. And we've got all the other planets around the star system as well. You'll notice that some of these planets, like Saturn, have a little icon underneath them. And that means that this planet has the ability to be exploited. We can exploit resources off of the various planets in the galaxy. We've got Titan, the moon that orbits Saturn here, and it's got a little bit of research that we could exploit as well if we built a starbase or a research station on Titan. And this would allow us to gather the resources here. Resources that are displayed in green, we've already gathered. The game is preceded with a variety of resources that you're already exploiting. And resources that are white are unexploited. So you're going to need to build a station over them in order to exploit them. I'll explain that in a little bit. But this is the system view. And inside, there's a whole bunch of icons. The most important ones are your ships, which you start with 3 little corvettes here. If I unpause, we can see them flying across the galaxy. Here they are. Little cuties there. We've got our star base, which sits at the center of our star in this system and houses a shipyard where we build ships and can actually be expanded with future technology to make it larger, to make it more capable. Below that, we have a construction vessel. This is what actually builds those research stations and those mining stations on planets inside of a system. We can actually do that now if we take a look around the system. I see that Io has 3 potential energy credits, and with our construction vessel equipped, I can right-click on Io and choose Build Mining Station. And our construction vessel is going to jump over to this planet, and it's going to start building it. You can see the blueprint for it sitting right here. And in a little bit, when that station is completed, we're going to have more resources that are added to our empire that we can use for various production. And then lastly is your science vessel. It's this vessel here. It's got the little science icon to represent it. And your science vessels are your most important early game ship, because that is what we're going to use to explore the galaxy. Let's take a look at what that looks like. If I press M or click on this button here to go to the galaxy map, here we have Sol and of course the planet Earth. And if we scroll out, we have the nearby star systems to our Sol system. And each one of these star systems is represented by kind of a dot on this map and connected by lines called hyperlanes, which your ships travel across. So a ship can't go from Sol to this unexplored system here. It has to travel along the hyperlanes to get there. If we scroll out even further, every single one of these dots is a star system full of planets, full of astral bodies, asteroids, all sorts of things for you to find and explore. Some of them aren't even stars, they're black holes at this point. And we are going to go out and explore them, and our hope is we find new planets that humans can inhabit as well. That's the goal. Now, In order to do that, we've got to use our science vessels to explore and survey these systems. We want to learn more about the galaxy that we exist in. And it just so happens that next to the Sol system is Alpha Centauri with a potentially habitable world on it. And that looks pretty juicy to me. Whenever you see this icon here, it means that there's a planet that you may be able to colonize with your species. In fact, I know I'll be able to colonize it because our habitability on continental worlds is very high. It's 100%. It's usually 70% or higher. And I can tell just by looking at this in our little tooltip here that this is a continental world. So my best first bet is to take our science vessel, right-click on the system Alpha Centauri, and choose Survey System. Now, there are two ways that you can use science vessels. You can use them to explore, and you can use them to survey. You'll notice that some of the star systems around us don't have names, and it's because we've never explored them before. We don't even know how to get to them. We know there's a path, but we haven't actually investigated it yet. So we could take our science vessel and right-click on that system and choose Explore, which would allow us to find out what planets are inside of that system. Maybe are there aliens inside that system? What's going on in there? But in order to colonize or take a system under your empire's control, you have to fully survey it using the survey action. So that's what our science vessel is doing here at Alpha Centauri. And if we actually scroll in, we'll see that actively happen. Our science vessel, little guy right here, is scanning each one of the astral bodies and trying to figure out, hey, what is this? What's on this planet? What's going on? Are there any anomalies that we might want to explore? And what resources can we exploit from each one of these star systems? That's very important for us as well. So that's going to take a little bit of time. While that happens, let me orient you a little bit to the user interface. There's a lot on the screen right now. In the upper left-hand corner at the top bar, we have kind of our resources panel, if you want to call it that. And our three basic resources are on the far left. We've got energy credits, which is sort of like a galactic currency. Whenever you sell resources, you'll get energy in response for that. We've got minerals, which are used to build new buildings. They're used to expand your planets. Minerals are really the basic building blocks of a lot of your empire. And of course, we have food, which we need to produce in farms to be able to feed our population. We are eventually going to have multiple planets in this game. We're going to have, multiple colonies that we take care of. But know that almost every single resource in the game is, I almost said global, galactic. It will cover all of your planets. So if you produce food on a single planet, your other planets in your empire will be able to eat that food. You don't have to worry about the logistics of transferring food from planet to planet anymore. Used to be a feature, is no longer, thank goodness. After food, we've got our two advanced resources. These are consumer goods and alloys. Consumer goods are sort of like the luxuries and gadgets, like iPods and Walkmen. If I'm dating myself here, I apologize. But consumer goods are typically created from minerals, and they're important for your population. It keeps your population happy. It keeps them complacent so that they don't start rioting. Very important to keep the consumer goods stocked. All of these resources technically can go under zero in terms of production. If you have too many population, they're going to start consuming a lot of food. They might cost a lot of energy credits to keep your planets running. They might consume too many consumer goods. And if you go under zero in terms of production, you'll start losing consumer goods, which you don't want to have happen. So you gotta expand carefully and make sure that you're making smart decisions there. Alloys are pretty simple. You use them to build star bases, to build space structures, and to build spaceships as well, which we're going to do in just a second. After that is influence. This is a resource that you use to take new systems. You'll see us use a little bit of influence to take Alpha Centauri once we've surveyed it. But for now, our influence gain is +3. This is a resource whose gain and loss doesn't fluctuate like your other resources do very often, but you should be careful about how you're spending influence because it's a pretty limited resource for most empires. Next up is unity. This is what we use to unlock empire-wide bonuses called traditions, and it also allows us to hire new leaders to be admirals for our fleets, to be generals, to lead our scientific endeavors. You'll notice that we actually have a leader, Fiona Riley, however it's pronounced, on our science vessel here, and leaders have traits. So if I click on this little leader icon, you'll see our scientific leaders here, and each one has a trait, which is this little green circle that shows if they have any strengths or sometimes a weakness that might actually make their job a little bit harder to do. And your leaders and managing leaders is pretty important in the early game, especially because they give you bonuses to things like the speed of your research. If we take a look at this one that has the maniacal trait, our society research leader is able to research technology 5% faster than other leaders would be able to. And we're very lucky in this, but our surveyor on our science vessel has an anomaly discovery chance. So she's really good at finding strange things out in the galaxy to find out what's going on with them, what's out there, right? So that's the big stuff at the top. After Unity, you've got just a couple of indicators here that tell you how well you're doing and maybe how spread your galaxy and your empire are. We've got research, which is the income of research that we gain every month. This is pretty important to keep track of. And we have special resources, which you may get later in the game, but we don't start with any of those right now. So that's the overhead outliner the overhead thing at the top. The next one is the outliner, which is on the right side. It's a really quick view of everything you own in the galaxy. And this outliner gets bigger and bigger and bigger as your galaxy and your empire expand. Your galaxy doesn't expand, your empire expands. One of these days, I'll get that stuck in my head. We can see our planet Earth, and we can actually access the management of our very first planet, of our home planet. We can also go to that star station that I showed you about. It's actually called a starport right now because it's been upgraded. And we can manage it here. So we could choose to replace some of these buildings and some of these modules on the starport if we'd like to, or we can upgrade it when we get the technology to do so. So your outliner is really, really helpful. I use this basically every second in the game. You'll see as we play, but you get a really good sense of what's going on, what's happening. And we'll notice even that our construction ship that we went to grab the energy from Io has completed their job. Here they are sitting here, and here is the station that they built that is sitting over Io and is generating 3 energy credits for us just because we can, which is pretty sweet. So that all's been done. That's the user interface. There are a lot of things on the side here to access some of the panels that I'm going to be opening up, but you can access these in your own game. You'll get a sense of what all is in there. There's a lot on the left. But first, just below our resources, we have our pop-up area. This is where different notifications will pop up to let you know maybe there's something you need to do. Maybe there's something you are forgetting. And when you very first start the game, the most important one, before you even unpause, is to choose your starting technologies in each of the 3 trees. So let's do that now by opening up any of those icons. Opens up the technology panel, and the technology panel is split into 3 trees: physics research, society research, and engineering. And each one of these is a branching tree that branches out into different types of technology. There are paths designed for building new ships, or in front of us we can actually see 2 specialized paths: the covert operations path, which allows us to engage in espionage and covert activities, and the energy weapons path. So if we want to have a really strong laser-based fleet, we might want to go down the energy weapons path. These are just guidance for you. You don't have to go down a technology path, but you'll get a sense of what technologies these unlock if you research them. Cool? So the first thing I want to do is pick a research. We've got 3 options in front of us. They're actually very nicely spread, which makes this tutorial very easy. The top one here, the global energy management, gives us an energy grid. This is kind of an economic research, right? If we build this energy grid on a planet, we will get more energy. But if we take a look in the top left here, we've got an income of 83 energy. That's pretty high for the start of the game. We don't really need an energy grid. This is not really a pressing matter for us. You'll notice it also unlocks something called an edict. I'll talk about edicts either in this tutorial or in the next tutorial. I'm going to skip quantum theory because it's the one we're taking. I'm going to skip down to blue lasers, which we covered a little bit. This is let's improve the technology on our ships. Let's get our access to a laser turret on any one of our ships now or in the future that allows us to do more damage to other people's ships. Pretty good technology if you want to be kind of aggressive, though we are a peaceful human species. And in the middle here, the one that we skipped is quantum theory. And I recommend that you take this one as a starting technology, unless you have a particularly aggressive neighbor that you're aware of. This is going to give you a plus 20% increase to your physics research speed now and into the future. It's just flat out good. And the earlier you take these technologies, the more benefit you get from them. So I would recommend taking the tech that looks like this. There's one in every tech tree, but we might not be so lucky that it's there. Click on the technology and you'll see how long it's going to take you to generate it and research it fully. Taking a look at society research, we got lucky as well. We've got society research from researchers, plus 20% as well. I'm going to take this. It's just flat out good. It's a really nice one to take. The other one that I would take in this case is probably planetary unification, because it gives you a lump sum of unity, which allows us to unlock traditions very early. But for now, I think it just makes sense to take the base tech increase. It's kind of boring, but we'll have more interesting decisions to make in the future. And we got lucky enough that in engineering, we have the same thing. You'll notice in engineering, we have the Corvette build cost and build speed. So this is another aggressive technology that we could take to decrease the cost and decrease the time it takes for us to build ships, military ships. And then we've got our powered exoskeletons, which is sort of our economic one. If you wanted to go the robotic path, if the future of your empire is that you are going to be replacing your body parts with exoskeletons, or maybe even replacing your population with robotic population in the future, possibly, you might want to take the powered exoskeletons because that will lead you down that path for your empire. I'm going to take the nanomechanics technology. It's just a flat out. It's the same thing as we're doing for the other ones. And you'll notice that our technologies are pretty similar between the three trees. Not half bad. One last thing to orient you to technologies really quick. If I click on this little change research button, I can see our options again. Each one of these technologies has an identifier. It falls under a type, right? Our nanomechanics is an industry type technology. Our corvettes is a voidcraft, and our powered exoskeletons also is considered an industry type technology. These technologies usually branch into similar techs to one another as you unlock them. So if we unlock nanomechanics, we may also unlock an additional industry technology, not always, but often. But the thing you want to be very aware of is your leader. So we took a look at leaders when we saw our science vessel earlier, but I'm going to click the recruit icon here. We got very lucky that this worked out. This is going wonderfully, actually. Here is where you recruit new scientists or new leaders. They might be admirals or generals in the future. They might be governors who govern sections of space. But inside of the leader panel, there are 3 possible leaders that we could hire. The cost in Unity that it costs us to hire them, right? We've got 213 Unity right now. And our third scientist has a trait. All these have a trait, but our third scientist has a trait specific to an engineering research. They are really interested in voidcraft. They're really interested in building new ships, in building new weapons for ships as well. And because of that, they will be able to research voidcraft technologies 15% faster than any other leader would be able to, which is really good. Behind the scenes, underneath all of the game code, this leader also makes voidcraft technologies show up more often in the technology panel when you research engineering research. So you may want to take this leader if you know you need to build up a big armada. You've got a really aggressive enemy on your borders. You should take this leader likely and start researching voidcraft technologies with them. It's going to allow you to find those technologies more frequently. There are other traits that are more general, like maniacal gives just flat out 5% research speed. And this leader could be in any of these jobs, honestly. Any of these jobs would be totally fine for them. You could sort of min-max the game and take one of these leaders early, but if you do so, it's going to take a portion of your Unity, and you're going to be that much further away from unlocking a tradition. Okay, so I would recommend don't hire any new leaders except for one exception, which I'm going to show you now. We've got a single science vessel out here exploring the stars, but look how many star systems there are. There's tons of them. So instead of just relying on a single one of our science vessels, we're going to build a couple of new ones. And this is my recommendation for anybody to do, because it really, really, really is important in the early game to explore and survey as much as you possibly can. So I'm going to go to our station again. I could click on it here in the outliner, right, the Sol station, or I can click on this icon to the right of our system name, because I've upgraded it to a starport. It was upgraded for us by the game when you first start. And because we have a shipyard module, we have access to the shipyard tab, which I can click and I can build new ships. Here's our corvettes, which we could build a couple of up, but I don't think that we have many aggressive people on our borders, so I'm not too worried about it yet. But we can build new science vessels, and we can see the cost is 100 alloys. We've got 204 right now, and it's going to take us 60 days or 60 cycles to be able to build it. But I'm going to do that now because I want a couple more science ships out there in space. In fact, I'm going to build 2 of these because we've got a pretty branching area of space. There's a lot of different directions that our science vessels can go. The more directions that they can spread out, the more science vessels you're going to want. But typically in the early game, you want no more than 2, 3, maybe 4 science vessels maximum, unless you have a very specific plan of how to use them. Cool. So I had the game paused. Our science vessel hasn't completed Alpha Centauri yet, but I have noticed that we've gained a couple more minerals here. We've got 305, and we still have some resources in Sol that we haven't exploited yet. Remember how we used our construction vessel to go specifically to Io and build an energy credit planet, right? An energy credit mining station over Io. I can do that much, much, much more simply from the galaxy view. And you can actually use the galaxy view for a lot of the same functionality that you would use the star view, right? But I'm going to take my construction vessel, and I'm going to right click on Sol because I can see that there's 3 minerals and 2 engineering research that we haven't exploited. And by right clicking, I've got the really quick, hey, go ahead and build the mining stations, or in order to grab the engineering research, go ahead and build the research stations very quickly at the click of a button. I don't have to specifically go to every single planet and do that. So I'm going to have them build mining station, and then I'm going to hold the shift key. You can't see my keyboard, but I'll hold the shift key and right click, and I'll choose build research stations. And now in their queue, they're going to build the mining station first to grab the minerals, and then they're going to build the research station to grab the energy research. It's quick and easy. I can forget about it, and I can move on to other things, like the first of our 2 science vessels that's just been created. Now, science vessels, in order to survey systems, require scientists or leaders on them. And so I've got to go into the leader panel once more, click recruit, and recruit a leader from this list. Unfortunately, none of these leaders have traits that benefit a exploration scientist, right? Maniacal and that research speed is only for researching new technologies in the technology tree. The only one here that has some benefit, kind of, to us is the eager trait, which not only reduces the cost to recruit that leader, it's 50 instead of 100, but it also reduces their upkeep. Keep in mind, for every leader that you have, they cost an amount of unity. And if you hire too many leaders at once, you're not going to have any unity to gain to be able to purchase new ones. So it's always a balancing act in Stellaris between those two. I'll take Luis, though I don't think he's a particularly good leader for this. He's somebody that will sit in a ship for us. And keep in mind, you've got to, after recruiting him, click on him to assign him to the science vessel. And now we can send this vessel out this way to survey some of these systems. I had a sense that this system connected. There was a small little line here that I saw that showed me that it shot out into this portion of space. So Luis is going to go that way. We've got, who is this? Fiona heading out this way. Let's queue up some for Fiona as well. And here we have Fiona's trait actually in action, which is awesome to see. Fiona, remember, has the trait which allows her to discover more anomalies. Now, anomalies are out there in space, and there's a percentage chance every single time a science vessel researches an astral body to find an anomaly on that astral body. And anomalies are things that may lead to more resources on those in those systems that we can exploit in the future. They may lead to a pirate faction attacking, or some kind of alien crawling out of an asteroid. There's all sorts of different anomalies out there in space. We found one that's relatively easy for us to research. We could do some quick research on it. It'll only take 120 cycles, but that's 120 cycles that Fiona won't be working to find out about space. I would recommend, when you first start the game, ignore anomalies and come back to them. They're permanent. They'll be there for you to research in the future. Most importantly is to find out, who are you up against? Who's nearby? Who are your neighbors? So I'm going to say leave for now. And we can always bring a science vessel, even a new science vessel like the one that just got created in our home system of Sol, to go and research that in the future, right? But for now, I want Fiona kind of focused on surveying Alpha Centauri so that we can grab a new colony right off the bat. We've got that new science vessel. Oh, sorry, that's Louise, actually. I lied. In 5 cycles, we've got a new science vessel. Here it is. And on the, I thought this was the Tchaikovsky. It's very close. We've got to put, of course, a new scientific leader on it. Let's choose recruit. We've got a list of new leaders, which turns over. I think this might be every, I want to say every month. I could be wrong about that. We're on January 28th. If we just wait 2 days. No, it's not every month. I'm not sure exactly when this turns over, but it gives you a new selection of leaders every so often. None of these resources, none of these traits are particularly good for a scientific leader that's going out and exploring the galaxy, yet again, unfortunately, but we can do a little bit of a swap here that might be beneficial for our empire over time. If we take a look at our existing leaders right now, remember, we've got a society researcher that has maniacal. I like it. They can stay there. We have a physics researcher that's got a trait that increases the amount of experience they gain, which is pretty good. And we've got a physics researcher that we can recruit that allows them to research more about particle physics quicker. Not half bad. Not half bad. We've got an engineering researcher with a lifespan of increased 25 years. They're very resilient. They're very healthy. And we have a engineering researcher here that could research more about materials. Materials is a very, very, very good specialization for an early game researcher because it allows you to grow your economy stronger. It'll give you more technologies that allow you to get access to more minerals, to get access to more energy, etc. So I'm going to recruit this leader, okay? And I'm actually going to put them on the engineering research. But first, I'm going to take that engineering researcher who's on there right now and assign them to my science vessel. And because the game wants to be very sure that you know what you're doing, we got a pop-up in the upper left-hand corner that says, hey, you think you're researching engineering research, but actually nobody's researching engineering research. So you can click on this icon and assign a new scientist. You'll have to do this when your scientists die, which they will eventually. That was very dramatic. Your scientists will die eventually, but I'm going to click on our brand new materials expertise scientist and assign them to the engineering technology. You can always go in this panel here on the left and choose technology and see who's assigned and what the progress is for each one of those techs. Cool. That's going to be the start of your empire, but there is so much more to teach you. We've got to cover traditions and more empire customizations, some strategies for how to expand out into the galaxy, and we haven't even talked about how you should administrate planets. There's a lot more to learn for this game, and I'm really excited to teach you all about it. If you enjoyed it, if it was helpful, don't forget to leave the video a like, and hey, let me know down in the comments, or maybe I didn't explain something well enough. I glossed over something that maybe you'd like a little bit more explanation. If you leave me a comment down below, I'll do my best to answer, and I would love for anybody else who knows Stellaris to provide answers down there. What's going on, everybody? It's Max the Catfish, and we are back with video number 2 in our beginner's tutorial series for Stellaris. In our last video, I explained the user interface elements around the game. We talked a little bit about technology and how to hire new leaders, as well as how to build ships and your first starting steps into the galaxy, right? We took our science vessels and we sent them out into space to explore more about the stars. I'm going to unpause the game now, and we're going to let that happen. You'll notice our science vessels moving across the hyperlanes here, and we've got a new science vessel too that needs some work, so I'm going to assign him to survey some of these stars out that way. So that's going to take a little bit of time, but we should be almost finished with surveying Alpha Centauri. There's actually a lot going on in this system, so our science vessel is taking their time, checking each and every planetary body. You can speed this up at this point by clicking on the buttons in the upper right-hand corner, the plus and minus icons, which will speed up the speed of the game or slow it down, which I love doing in the middle of a really big combat between ships, because ships will shoot at each other and fight each other in slow motion. It's very epic. It's very cool. But we're going to speed this up a little bit because I want the science vessel to finish her work on Alpha Centauri. Before that could happen, we got a pop-up related to traditions. We talked about how gaining unity will unlock new empire-wide bonuses for your empire. These are called traditions. So let's take a look at the traditions panel. This is a monster of a panel. It's really sort of domineering, but it's pretty simple on the onset. If you click select, you are going to be able to spend 300 unity. Here's the cost. 300 of your unity, we've got 334 right now, to adopt a new tradition tree. There's about, 9 different tradition trees at the base level of the game without any DLC. And it's a bit overwhelming to look at this, but you'll notice that each one of these trees fits into one of these 7 slots in your traditions. You won't be able to adopt every tradition tree for an empire, so you're going to have to pick and choose, and it's a permanent decision. So you want to be very careful about which one of these you adopt and when. I'm going to give you just a really quick beginner tutorial tip, very quick and simple. Your first tradition should be probably either discovery or expansion. Discovery is all about finding out about the stars, learning out about what's out there in the galaxy, who is even there, where are these anomalies that we've been told about, and how do we research them quicker. It also gives you bonuses to your research speed and benefits to your researchers as well. So it'll make researching technologies cheaper for your empire comparatively to other empires. Discovery is usually the tree that I take, and I recommend for anybody who isn't going super aggressive. If you have to play super aggressive because of your empire and the way that you're playing it out, you should probably take expansion first. And sometimes I even take discovery and then expansion, because both traditions are very good for the early game and throughout the game as well, but they play the biggest role at the very start of the game. If you're going a bit more aggressive, if you're a little bit more territorial, if you want to have a massive empire, you want to take it as quickly as possible and grow your empire as quickly as possible, you should take expansion first. This gives you benefits to grabbing new space and taking portions of space for your empire, claiming them for your own. It also allows your planets, when you build new colonies, to start with even more population than they would otherwise. And the more population you have on a planet, the more resources and the more work you can have done to advance your empire. So expansion is a really good one if you want to be a bit more of an expansionist, a bit more of an aggressive play. And discovery is just a flat out good one for basically anybody to take, barring some very rare circumstances. So we'll take discovery. Before we do that, I want to explain a little bit about traditions. Adopting a tradition will give you a bonus when you do so, and it's going to unlock this tradition tree that you'll need to unlock by spending more unity in the future. So you're going to see that each one of these trees has 5 total traditions in them, right? All of these do. And the discovery tree has these 2 leading, sort of like mini tech trees almost, but it's paid for using unity. And just by adopting the discovery tree, we're going to unlock some benefits, which I'll show you in just a second. You'll notice that we have a benefit to the research speed of anomalies, so that's pretty sweet as well. I'm going to click adopt. Do you want to spend the 300 unity? Yes, I do. And now discovery is locked into our tradition panel. We can't undo that decision, so pick wisely. Now, in a little bit of time, we're going to have 343 unity. We're going to be able to grab a new tradition, and we're probably going to unlock one of the traditions inside of the discovery tree. But for now, we don't have the unity to do that. Unlocking discovery has unlocked an edict. And I want to explain edicts because this is something that goes sort of unknown by new players for a long time, but actually they're really powerful and they've got some pretty big effects on the game. If you go over to the left side menu here and choose edicts, you're going to see a list of a bunch of just names, and you're expected to know what each one of these is. You'll actually find out if you scroll over them. These are temporary toggleable bonuses for your empire. Sometimes they're all good. and it's just straight up benefit. Sometimes you're actually going to make a bit of a trade, right? There's going to be some good things, there's going to be some bad things associated with them. You'll see whether they're good or bad based on the color of the numbers here. So all of the numbers in Map the Stars are green. This survey speed plus 25%, discovery chance plus 10%, the hyperlane detection range plus 1. Those are all positive things. They are written in green. If it is a negative effect on your empire, or maybe a trade-off, right, for the positive bits, they will be red. If it's sort of unknown whether it's positive or negative, it's sort of neutral, they'll be written in yellow. So just keep an eye on that when you are choosing edicts. Every edict has an activation and upkeep cost. And this upkeep is initially going to be taken out of what is called your edicts fund. And this is a static pool of unity. It's separate from your unity gain. It doesn't touch how much unity you get per month. And this edicts fund is designed to first have the upkeep of each one of your edicts taken out of it. And if you exceed your edicts fund, if we were to activate Map the Stars and encourage political thought, right? Each one of these costs 15 unity. We would exceed this by 10 unity, and that unity will be taken out of our unity income from our empire. I don't really want that to happen, not this early in the game. Traditions are very powerful, and you need to build unity in order to unlock them. So I'm just going to unlock up to our edicts fund cap, Map the Stars, which is the edict that we got from the tradition that we just unlocked, the discovery tradition. And if I check this, you'll notice that 14.5, it rounds down to 14, 14.5 out of 20 of our edicts fund is being taken. And this is now active. All of our science vessels around the galaxy are now faster at surveying the stars and the astral bodies that exist in each one of these systems, like what just happened there. And we've got a whole bunch of pop-ups that are popping up, that I'm going to dismiss right now because there is a lot. We will say, we just finished grabbing Alpha Centauri. And so this entire system is now fully surveyed. And because it's fully surveyed, it is possible for us to send a construction vessel, not a science vessel, a construction vessel, to take it into our empire and make it ours. Kind of fitting for humans to do this, right? This is one of the star systems outside of our own in real life that we think might have some habitable planet on it. So we're going to take a construction vessel, send it to Alpha Centauri, and build a starbase. Let's go ahead and do that right now. You'll notice when I scrolled over that, let's cancel that action really quick just to show you. Building starbases costs alloys, which we use to build new ships, and it also costs influence. Remember I talked about how influence was a resource that doesn't really fluctuate how much you gain or lose very often, very frequently. It is a very, very limited resource, and that's by design. It's to prevent you from expanding infinitely into space and just having this be a game of racing people to take the most stars. Instead, we have to use our limited influence to make smart decisions of which stars we want to colonize, which planets we want to colonize. And I see a planet here that is 85% habitable. It's almost as good as Earth. Not as good, but almost as good. Maybe there are some angry monsters here that come out of caves at night. Maybe the oxygen level is just a little bit reduced and it requires our workers to have supplementary oxygen, right, as they're working. These kind of things determine whether a planet is going to be habitable for your species or not. So you've got to keep those in mind, but I can see that this is a habitable world. Our citizens will be very happy on it, and so we're going to build a starbase here first. You can't colonize planets unless they exist in your empire. So keep that in mind. You've got to colonize them first by building starbases. Now, we've got a pretty important pop-up that pops up for every player at the beginning of the game, and it is asking us, hey, we think there's alien life out there. We've heard signals. We are getting these strange radio messages from outer space. We haven't met them yet. But we've got to think a little bit about how are we going to interact with aliens if we first meet them, right? What is our interaction with them going to be like? Are we going to just, we're gung-ho, greet them with open arms, come on in, let's hug it out, right? In so doing, we're showing people that we're a friendly species, that we'll learn more about them much more quickly. They'll be able to establish contact with us much more quickly, but maybe that leaves us somewhat vulnerable to attacks. Maybe that makes us a little bit more vulnerable to an alien species that might want to do us harm. It's something to consider. Maybe instead we want to be a little bit more cautious. We don't want to form immediate relations with aliens. We want to spend the time, take the time to learn about them before we establish a communication channel with them where we're just chatting, right? With diplomacy. If we do the cautious route, it's much less likely that aliens are going to be able to negatively impact us in those first few sessions, right? We're taking it slow, we're taking it easy. Now, we aren't an aggressive species, so we can't take this last option. This is actually only allowed for people who are a bit aggressive, who are a bit more militaristic. But we could instead choose to ward off other aliens. We don't want to hear from them. We are going to be able to attack them very early. Even before establishing communications, we could blow up their ships, which normally you can't do. But That's not who we are. We're kind of interested in finding out about aliens, but maybe it's wise to be cautious. Maybe we should be careful about who we interact with and make communications with. So I'll choose it's wise to be cautious. This is just one of many decisions you're going to have to make in Stellaris as you play the game. And these pop-ups are going to come up from things like anomalies, from things like meeting new aliens, from things like entering systems that have really abnormal things that are happening in them. There's a lot of decisions to be made in the game, but for now, our first decision is made. We can wipe the sweat off our brow and move on, taking Alpha Centauri into our empire. This is only going to take a couple of days to build this starbase. You can see the percentage completion here in the bottom left-hand corner because I have our construction vessel selected, right? So that's just going to take just a second. And now we own Alpha Centauri. This is part of our empire. And our empire borders have expanded to contain Alpha Centauri in it. It's pretty sweet. Now, we've got a bunch of resources in here, 12 minerals, 4 energy credits. This is a really rich system on the scale of systems. You'll notice that up here in Tachvan, we've got 4 energy credits and only 4 society research. We have way more in Alpha Centauri. So as you're expanding your empire, as you're expanding your control of space, you should give some attention to these, right? Taking a system that has a lot of resources in it, but no planets, is a really strong strategic move in Stellaris. And taking systems that sort of let's say, I call this a choke point, that exists between 2 systems, and that's the only way for people to travel. That is a very strong strategic move to do as well. Looking at our space here, I see a couple of choke points that are very strong defensive, militaristic decisions that you might want to take. It would be really important for us to grab these 2 systems here, because then we can put a massive armada there, and people trying to get into our space would have to fly through our armada. There's no other way for them to go. And then I see one here, which is pretty close to our space, a little bit too close, and I see one here. And that's probably what we're going to head for. I think it would be really smart for us to grab these 2 systems here and start building them up as a defensive position. If an opponent takes all of your planets, you lose the game. You're out completely. So it's very important for you to defend planets as best you can. And one of the ways that you can do that is by taking these strategic choke point decisions and systems here. So I'm going to take our science vessel. I'm actually going to divert them. They're going to do the surveying here, and then I want them to survey these 2 systems here. Remember, we can't actually bring them into our empire until we fully surveyed them. So I'm going to have them survey there, and then we're going to have this vessel do something very similar. Let's survey that and head this way. Cool. This guy is kind of going to be like the cleanup crew almost. I'm going to have them survey all of the star systems that, ooh, you know what? We've got one in the way here. Hold on. Let's survey this direction, because that is a system with a continental world on it that I'm going to want to colonize. And let's have them clean up all of the other systems that we're not paying attention to right now. Like that. Cool. So they're going to do that automatically. I don't have to pay them any mind. I've given them a ton of responsibilities, so they're just going to do that as they take the time to do it. We've got a whole bunch of things that just popped up, so let's do these one at a time. We've got a bunch of pop-ups here. The first one, this is pretty important when you see these pop up, because it means that something aggressive has happened, and we've actually seen it happen in this system here of Vilmar. Some alien vessels try to engage and attack our peaceful science vessel. And that's a little bit strange. Like, who was that? We can actually find out by clicking on the system. Sorry, the pop-ups are in the way. These icons here with a red exclamation mark represent that there was a vessel there that was being aggressive against our science vessel, but we don't know what the vessel was. We don't know who that alien was. We know nothing about them. We can, however, start to research and learn a little bit more about them, which would be pretty smart. We've got news that we've found a new alien species, which is super interesting. So that's all this pop-up said. Here is the pop-up where we had some kind of encounter with some kind of alien that we should probably do some research on. We've made first contact with an unknown entity. And while that was happening, we had a science vessel find out that there's a new anomaly somewhere out in space. This one I'll dismiss. But over this system is a new icon. It's this little radar dish icon, right? That's blue, hexagonal. And if we click on that, we can see that there was an alien species that looked something like this. It might be kind of important for us to find out who they are. What do they want? Why were they aggressive against us? Why did they try to blow up one of our ships? And to do that, we have to assign an envoy. You're going to do this for every single alien species that you meet out in the galaxy to a certain extent. At a certain point, you get really good at deciphering and understanding other aliens, but because this is our very first alien contact, we need to figure out more about them. So I'm going to assign an envoy. Most empires start with 2. Our empire is starting with 3. We're lucky that way. And we assign an envoy the same way kind of that you assign a leader to a role, right? We choose an envoy and choose accept. And now that envoy is going to work to decipher the alien language and try to find out more about what its intentions are. We know nothing about them. But over time, through a series of these researches, our researcher is going to find out a little bit more about them, a little bit more about them, a little bit more about them, until we can finally understand them and their intentions. Now, while that was happening, we had access to a new tradition. Remember that we unlocked the discovery tradition tree here. And so we've got the option of one of these first two starting traditions. We can choose if we wanted to, not a good idea, but instead we could take a second tradition if we'd like to. Maybe there's a really good adoption effect that you need right now. That's all you're going to be able to get is the adoption effect. But for now, I want to finish the discovery tree because it's pretty important for us to do so. And we've got two options. The first one is we can increase the level cap of our scientists. So our scientists can be smarter over time as they gain experience, learning about the world, researching new technologies, etc. Or we could take a technology that further compounds on the tech that we took earlier, which gave us, the technology that we took earlier, Map the Stars, that allowed us to increase their survey speed. So now we're getting an additional 35% survey speed on top of the 35% that we got from Map the Stars. 25%, I think it was. That's pretty good. Plus, the ability for our science, it says science ship disengagement chance. What this means is if they come into contact with an aggressive alien species, like what just happened, they're going to be able to disengage from that combat and stay alive 50% more if that were to happen. And because space is this really big unknown place and we're a little bit scared about what's going on, that's a pretty good thing to take, especially early in the game. So I'm going to take To Boldly Go. This is my starter moves usually in almost every game of Stellaris. And we grabbed our next tradition. Awesome. So Alpha Centauri, I forgot to do this. We talked about how juicy this system was, but we didn't do anything with it. And we could tell that we didn't because the resources are still underneath that system sitting here. So I'm going to take my my construction vessel, right click on the system like we did before in Sol, and I'm going to choose build mining stations. Holding shift, I'm going to choose build research stations. And now they're going to queue up all of that to happen on that system. We're going to grab all of that. But I'm most interested actually, not in the resources that are here, but in the planet, Alpha Centauri 3. We can see a little bit about this planet. We can see that our species is habitable on this planet. They would actually do very well here. 85% when that habitability value is green is good. That means your population, when they live there, are likely going to be able to produce more resources, live happier, have lower crime rates, and have more stability, all of which is really good for a planet. That said, unfortunately, this planet is very small. This is a small planet, smaller than Earth. The size of planets ranges from size, I think it's size 10 to size 25 at the biggest. I think there's even a possibility in some DLCs for planets to grow even larger than that, and you to actually increase the size of your planet, which is pretty cool. If not, that's a mod. I can't quite remember. But planet size 12 is pretty low on the spectrum. That means it's not going to be able to support the same population as our larger planets, but it's still worth taking. But I see a trait on this planet. This planet is bleak. Life struggles to survive here. We barely are going to be able to keep a population alive. It is not very fun to live here. And because of that, not only is the habitability of our species on this planet decreased by 5, but also if we try to make food on this planet, produce food on this planet, our food income is reduced by 10% on this planet alone. You'll notice even that it says max agricultural districts -2. And if we take a look at potentially our ability to build farms, we can only build 3 farms on this planet. It's a terrible planet to try to grow food. So this may not be the center of our food production, but I do see that this planet has some really strong specialization potential for us moving forward. The size of your planet determines how many districts you can build. You can see that we've got 10 maximum districts right now. It's actually 12. 2 of them are blocked by these red slash throughs. And usually what that means is there is something that's preventing you from being able to build there, right? Something is preventing you from being able to build a district in that part of your planet. Districts you should think of as how we portion off portions of a planet to specialize in something. So we can have city districts. This is parts of our planet that we've proportioned off for people to live. And at the same time, a city district is going to increase the amount of housing. We can have more population living on that planet because our cities are built vertically, right? We've got industrial districts, which are these big churning portions of industry that are turning our minerals into those advanced resources that we talked about in the last tutorial, into consumer goods and alloys. And both city districts and industrial districts are unlimited. You could fill an entire planet with city districts or industrial districts if you want to. The other districts are not like this. These are limited based on a variety of features on that planet, which we expanded pressing the features button. And the variety of positive features will determine how many of each district can be built. You don't have to worry about this so much. You don't have to worry about this portion of features. They're kind of automatic, and as you play the game, they're just kind of gonna whip past you. You're not gonna think about them very much. But there are negative features on almost every planet that prevent you from building completely freely, right? We've got a dense jungle here, and it is blocking 2 of our agriculture districts. Remember, 2 of our bleak agriculture districts that we can barely create food on. So maybe that's not that big of a deal, right? Maybe we don't have to clear this dense jungle. It's not that big of a deal. Toxic kelp also is finding its way into our caves and our mining districts, and it's preventing us from building more mining districts. But you'll notice something. Both agriculture districts and mining districts have a maximum number of 3 on this planet. This planet's not rich in minerals. It's not rich even in the minerals that are required to make food, right? Because of the bleak trait on this planet. But what it is rich in is swaths of land that we can use to generate energy. In fact, we can generate basically an unlimited number of generator districts because of how much land is perfect on this planet for us to generate energy on it. That's awesome. That's really great. My tip for players is you generally want a planet to be very specialized. Your capital won't be at first, but your other planets should be. You should find out what you want to do on that planet. And this is a great planet for generator districts. So we're going to do that. Now, I want to colonize this planet. And it's funny this is coming up. This is actually a really big pain point for new players. I want to colonize this planet, but it has an anomaly on it. We can't quite figure out what it is, but there's something about Alpha Centauri 3 that gives us pause. We're not really sure if we should colonize it. Something is strange down there, and we don't quite know what. I'm going to show you what that is, how to find out about it, how to clear the anomaly, and how to colonize planets in our next tutorial. If you're liking the tutorial series, let me know down below. Let me know if there's anything that you'd like more explanation on. This is our second, I think, probably in the series. So let me know if I skipped over anything or if there's more explanation that you need, and I'll respond to your comments as I get them. Thank you so much for watching. If this was helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and I will see you in the next video where we talk about colonization of planets and anomalies. What's going on, everybody? It's Max the Catfish, and we are back with what I think is probably going to be the third in our tutorial series here in 2022 of Stellaris. I am giving a big refresher on a beginner's tutorial for the game because there's a lot to learn. And the last 2 tutorials, we talked about your first steps out in space, technology and leaders, edicts, and what traditions are and how you gain them, and also how to explore space and what is all out there. If you haven't seen those and you want to catch up, you should go back a couple of steps. I'll probably put a link to the very first tutorial up in the screen here as you're looking at it. But if you're joining us after our last tutorial, welcome back. We're taking a look at Alpha Centauri 3, which is a planet closest to Earth that we've found so far, but we can't colonize it because it has this anomaly on it that's giving us a little bit of pause. We're not quite sure if we should colonize this planet. We're not even sure what's wrong with it. It just seems strange. And so I'm gonna have to take one of our science vessels and go explore Alpha Centauri 3. Now, I grabbed our science vessel by clicking on it from the galaxy map, and then I zoomed into the star map. I still have them grabbed. I still have them in my my selector. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner. And Alpha Centauri 3 has this icon underneath it, which is the icon for an anomaly. We've been skipping most of these anomalies because they take a lot of time to research, but this one is particularly important for us specifically because it exists on a planet that I want to colonize, and you have to clear that anomaly before you can colonize it. So with our science vessel selected, I'm going to right-click on Alpha Centauri, and I'm going to choose Research. And our science vessel makes a path. It completely forgets about what it was going to do. It wipes its queue, and it heads down to Alpha Centauri to research that anomaly. And that's going to take some time. It might even have some decisions that we're going to need to make in the process of that. That's a completely different one that popped up. In the process of researching that anomaly, you can actually find out a little bit more if you want to know what's going on by clicking on the anomaly here. You can see that a glint of metal has activated our sensors. They indicate the presence of some valuable substances in the planet's crust, which is actually kind of surprising because when we looked at Alpha Centauri, we felt that it's not actually that rich in minerals. So what is that metal? What is that resource? Why is it there? Should we care about it? Now, before we let that happen, we've got a new pop-up, and some of these pop-ups you can't dismiss. You have to make a decision right now that it's gonna change the course of your empire for for good, honestly. And this one is the Habitable World Survey. We know that we can live in planets out there in space, but should we pursue that? Answer feels pretty obvious to me. I think that'd be really cool, but maybe you don't quite care about finding new planets and about finding new places to live. Maybe you're actually doing a challenge run in Stellaris where you want to live on one planet and one planet only. You can do that if you'd like to. The Habitable World Survey is going to give us some kind of benefit for finding out about worlds that we could potentially live on. Or if that's not very important for us right now and we really need the Unity, maybe we need this 223 Unity, which is kind of the reward if you don't do this, we could just take the Unity and move on. That's a possibility, but I'm kind of interested in finding out about planets out there in the world. So I'm going to start the Habitable Worlds Survey event chain. Now, this is going to start a quest, and quests are tracked in your situation log under the situation log tab. There are a variety of situations that you're going to be dealing with as you expand out into space. Makes sense, right? There's going to be different research to keep track of. There are going to be different events that might be happening to your empire. If you gain more DLC and purchase DLC for Stellaris, there's even more stuff to do. And the situation log gets bogged down with tons and tons and tons of things to explore. I'm talking about, archaeological dig sites. You're going to have the extra dimensional beings asking things of you, all sorts of things. I don't want to spoil too much for those of you that are new to the game, but there's a lot to experience. And you're going to find it here in the situation log. We can take a look and see what are the requirements of the Habitable World Survey. And it shows us that we need to have surveyed 8 habitable worlds. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't count the world that we just surveyed, but we've got one more planet that's nearby that we're going to survey in a little bit, and we are going to get 1 of 8, right? We've got to find 7 more. And they are out there, out in the galaxy. We just have to explore them, find out where they are. So that's the situation log, just something worth noting. Our science vessel is sitting here just finishing up their research on the strange anomaly that was happening on Alpha Centauri, right? We got a detailed report of its geological riches, and apparently the planet's unique tectonic history has served to concentrate many minerals of interest near the surface. You see a change? Alpha Centauri used to have only 3 available mining districts, but now it has 9. These anomalies will add new resources to planets. They'll add new resources to astral bodies around a star, and you'll be able to exploit those in the future. It's really important eventually that you research all the anomalies around your space. Right now, we're skipping them because we want to learn more about the stars and the star systems that are around us and what planets we could potentially live on. But at some point, I'm going to want to come back here and research these anomalies because they unlock stuff like this. You'll notice that we have a new trait on our continental world as well called raw minerals, and this has added the mining districts to this planet. So now we've got a bit of a choice. We could specialize this planet in generation of energy if we'd like to, which was kind of our original plan. Or, it's one less district than generator districts provide, but we could instead make this a mining district and make this a place where we have a bunch of mineral generation. The choice of which one to take when colonizing planets and specializing them is really up to you. And it's dependent also on the other planets that you own. You'll notice that we only produce 37 minerals, but we produce 82 energy, right? These resources are not really equivalent to one another. Energy has these big spikes that go up and down as you play the game, and minerals have these sort of slower arc that increases as you increase your ability to make consumer goods or to make alloys. So it's up to you to decide, what order you want to do these things and which planets you want to specialize as which. I still think this would make a great generator district planet. I think that's fantastic. And so we're going to go our original route and choose to specialize this in generation of energy. I'll show you what that looks like in this tutorial. But first, we have to colonize it. That's the first thing we have to do. We have to get a colony ship to actually land here with our very first colonists. And so we can click on the colonize icon here. And what this is going to do, it's going to build a colony ship from the closest starport that has a shipyard on it, which is up there in Sol. If you had multiple species, you could choose which of your species you want to use to colonize that planet. And this allows you, if you have multiple species, to colonize planets that otherwise would be inhabitable for humans, but would still, if you colonize them with, let's say, an alien species instead, generate resources for your entire empire, right? We only have humans in our empire right now. Maybe in the future we'll have some other aliens. So for now, we'll build a colony ship full of humans, and we can name the planet if we'd like to. I'm just going to leave it by default. And now what's going to happen is in the nearest shipyard, we are going to create a colony ship. It requires alloys, food, and consumer goods to do this. So this is another way that the game limits you taking too many planets too quickly. You'll notice that we only have 75 consumer goods after that purchase. But in a second, the colony ship is going to be created, and without us touching it, it is going to fly from Sol to Alpha Centauri 3 and it's going to colonize our very first non-Earth planet. Very exciting. Before that happens, a couple of things have popped up here that I've sort of ignored. I may have even ignored them in the last tutorial, and so I want to get to them now. The first one we're very familiar with by now, I would hope, is we've got a new tradition available for us. And we can now take one of two choices. We can take the expansion of To Boldly Go, which unlocks a new edict. Remember, the edicts are these temporary empire-wide bonuses that we can toggle on and off if we'd like to. And this will increase the output of our research stations. Remember, those are the stations that are hovering over planets or astral bodies that provide research. And this is admittedly a very small bonus, but it's a bonus that adds up as you play. It also increases research from starbase constructions. I don't think we have any of those. That would be special buildings or special modules that produce research. It's not really a very good tradition to take. It's not in the early game. 20% of, 5, it's very, very, very low. You're going to get 1 extra research. It's not that strong. The one that I think is stronger is science division. And this has a term that we haven't touched on yet, but I'll explain what it is. You'll see actually pretty immediately, if we're lucky with our technology, we are. So remember, in our technology tree, when we chose one of these 3 technologies, we picked one and we had 3 options to choose from, right? These are your 3 alternatives. So our Society from Researchers is going to be increased by 20% in a couple of months. When we take this tradition, we are going to gain access to 1 more research alternative every single time we choose a new research. And this gives us a lot more flexibility and a lot more options to choose from. And that flexibility is a really big boon for our empire, because it means that if we've got 3 techs that we really don't like, maybe that 4th one is the one that we're going to want to choose. I'm going to take science division, and in fact, for our next tradition picks, we're going to go all the way down this right side because I find the technologies to be stronger. The traditions to be stronger. And then we're going to take our last tradition, which is on the left side here, the database uplinks. We'll take that as our last one. So let's unpause right after we take a look at our first contact. Remember how there was that alien that we found that was aggressive against our science vessel? Well, we just found out that calling it a life form may be incorrect. They seem to be mechanical drones that have been built for some unknown industrial purpose and possibly are just on the fritz, but we're not going to be able to communicate with them any further. So this first contact communication is going to end, and it's not going to continue any further than this. Just kidding. Yes, it is. I thought that the stage was complete and that was the end of communication. Actually, it's going on to stage 3. So we're going to find out a little bit more about them in just a second. Shows how much I know about this feature, right? This is a relatively new one. In the meantime, we've got our science vessel here that is sleeping. It doesn't have any work to do. It doesn't know what it should be doing. And so we've got to give it some jobs to do. I'm going to send it out here to survey this choke point that we talked about. That's going to be a defensive position for our empire. And we've got our science vessel here that had a little bit of a scrap with those alien vessels. I'm going to send it down south to survey this system here, and up to this system. You can have science vessels actually overlap surveying. You can have 3 science vessels survey the same system. They'll survey it 3 times as fast, which is pretty sweet. One thing worth noting as you're engaging with these aggressive vessels throughout the galaxy, you'll notice when I scrolled over this exclamation mark now, we see a new piece of information that we didn't see before. That is their fleet power strength. They have a fleet power strength of 777. They should go to Las Vegas and gamble their winnings. And that means that if we were to defeat them, we would likely need a fleet power that is stronger than that. Fleet power is a general representation of how strong your fleet is. But Stellaris is a game where you don't have to have the biggest fleet in order to win. You just have to have the smartest fleet, okay? We've got a bunch of vessels here that are pretty aggressive with a fleet power of 777. But remember, we've got our little fleet of corvettes, right? They should be up to snuff. They should be good to go. If we take a look in the outliner, or if we scroll over them, over Sol, where they're currently stationed, well, they only have a fleet power of 111. If we wanted to take out the fleet that's sitting here, if we want to survey this system and take it for our own, if we want to grab this defensive position, and I would highly recommend that you do that because this is a really strong defensive position here, with this choke point, this path into your own space, we have to summon a fleet greater than their fleet power and stronger than their fleet. Now, there's some ways to do this in the future where you can learn a little bit about how their ships are built. You can learn about what they're made out of and what weapons they might have on them. You don't have that technology quite yet. But instead of being smart, we could just do the brute force method and just build a bigger fleet. To do that, we're going to click on Sol Station, and we're just going to spam a bunch of corvettes. We can only build 5 right now. And because we only have 1 shipyard on this starbase, we are going to build them 1 at a time. You'll notice that the queue for the colony ship is being completed first, and then followed by the queue for the next corvette. and then the next Corvette, and the next Corvette. On these systems, on these star bases rather, you can actually build multiple shipyards if you'd like to. But what you build on a starbase is determined by what you need that starbase to do. What should its function be? Maybe this is a starport that builds a bunch of ships. In that case, we should replace our trade hub with a shipyard. I don't think that's the smartest decision to do in the early game. I'll explain trade and the concept of trade in another tutorial probably, because it's a little bit more of a complex subject. But for now, I'm just going to build up a couple of Corvettes, and I want my Corvettes to build a fleet eventually that is larger than 777. So we're getting there, we're building them, it's just going to take some time. Now we've got a couple of these technologies that just popped. We just finished our engineering and our society research, and you'll notice that the effects of our latest tradition have just come into play. Instead of having 3 options to choose from, I now have a 4th option that I can choose from. And between you and me, these aren't the best options to get in the early game unless you want to pump up the strength of your vessels, right? We need to be able to beat a fleet of 777. And normally I would be encouraging us to go for something that's a little bit more economic, a little bit more long-term, but we got to get aggressive. We got to get aggressive now. So we want to choose probably one of these bottom 3 technologies. The first one gains access to tier 2 armor, which will increase our armor hit points, every single one of these armors on a ship by 65. Or we could gain Corvette hull points, which is going to increase the value of our hulls on all of our Corvettes by 100, which is, it's pretty good. Or we could grab the afterburners, and afterburners, if they're put on a ship, are going to increase not only the speed that we move across space, but also it is going to increase our evasion of enemy attacks by 5%. This is a really tough choice to make, actually. This is a really difficult one to choose, but I think afterburners is a pretty strong tech overall. Almost all of your ships will have afterburners on them, and they're going to give you a 10% movement speed, which can give you a nice one-up against typically AI enemies in the game, but maybe also that evasion is going to come into play against our automated mining drones that on Vilmar here. So I'm going to grab the afterburners technology. And for our society research, we have something that's a little bit special here. We've unlocked what's called, I actually don't know what the name of it is, but it's almost like a reserved technology that will sit here forever. We will always have it as a 5th option or a 6th option if we have a 6th one, or a 7th option if we have a 7th one, until we're ready to research it. But we don't have to research it just yet. We can choose to, if it makes sense for us, or we could take one of these other options instead. We've got a whole slew of option choices here. We've got the off-world trading company, which gives us that trade value that I was kind of trying to move us away from for now. We'll talk about it in a little bit. We've got a hydroponics bay that allows us to produce more food on our planets, which actually could be kind of useful because we only have a surplus of 25 food per month. Could be something that we could grab. We've got the ground defense planning, which would increase the strength of our defense armies, but we don't see anybody that might come and attack us, or especially not anybody that might land troops on any of our planets. So I'm going to skip that one. We've got genome mapping, which I think is a community favorite. It's going to increase the growth speed of our planets and increase how quickly we gain new population, which is very strong. And then we've got planetary unification, which is one of the technologies we saw in a previous tutorial. Gives us that lump sum of unity, increases our unity gain by 5%, and unlocks a bunch of new edicts that we could use as temporary bonuses. I see these two as pretty strong starting moves. Both are really good. If we take a look, and if you're ever deciding between two, you might want to look and see if there's a path that this is leading you down. The genome mapping path, I'll give you a little bit of a hint, allows you to move down a path where we can biologically engineer and genetically engineer our species to become stronger, faster, more capable at mining or at growing crops or at researching. Maybe all of our species will be smarter. It's a very strong path to go down for sure. The planetary unification path is the administrative path. That's more about gaining unity as a resource, but also about increasing the capabilities of our planets. How capable are they at administrating well-functioning societies? Both of these are really, 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 really good, but I think genome mapping with that pop growth speed almost is always a quick take for me, and also it'd be kind of fun to do some genetic engineering down the line. So I'm going to grab genome mapping, and I promise I'll unpause the game now and let things happen. So we've got our science vessels. They're moving around, surveying space. I see a juicy star system there. I don't know if you see what I see, but 2 planets in that system, one of which is an ocean world, and one of which is an alpine world. That's really nice. But can our population live on an ocean world? Do we have the technology and the capability to thrive on an ocean world, especially if we're putting colonists down on that planet? Are they going to be able to thrive on a world where 90% of the planet is made of ocean? That's tough. We don't know yet because we haven't surveyed that planet yet. Similarly, we've got an alpine world, which is a frozen, frigid, barren area, and relatively small from a planet size perspective. Maybe we can live there, maybe we can't. We're gonna have to give our science vessel a little bit more time to research it. But in the meantime, there should be celebration because we just got our first human colony on Alpha Centauri. On Alpha Centauri now, we can start administrating. Just kidding, it hasn't happened yet. Our colonists have landed, but they're colonizing the planet. And in actually just a couple of years, in what looks like 3 years, because it's 2206, this is gonna finish in 2209, we are going to be able to finish the colonization of the planet and start administrating it. Now, I'm gonna be honest, if you've been watching Stellaris or playing Stellaris for a long time, you may have noticed that we have a massive, massive energy credits surplus, a massive mineral surplus, a massive food surplus. I haven't been playing min-maxing the game. I haven't been playing the way the game is meant to be played, but I have been showing you a lot of the concepts. You have noticed perhaps in the outliner that Earth has some icons popping up next to it. And we got some problems. We've got some red numbers, and red numbers in Stellaris usually means something should be happening and is not happening. This planet has not been administrated very well, or at all, by me, because I've been focused on other concepts. But as you're playing the game, you can keep the game paused as long as you want, and you can tackle all of these. We are going to tackle the concept of administration of planets and actually administration of your entire empire in our next tutorial. But really quick, I'm gonna finish up a few of these last few decisions. We've got our physics research that is up, and we've got 4 options here. 4 pretty good options, actually. Improved deflector is gonna give us shields for our ships and improved shields. The research station output we talked about, right? Not a very good option for us right now, but will scale up in the future. We've got one that just gives us a flat out increase to energy credits, but our economy of energy credits is really good. It's really good right now, so I'm not too concerned about grabbing field modulation. Administrative AI, though, is going to allow us to research an artificial intelligence that helps all of our scientists with the research speed in every tree across the board. This is a great technology to grab. It's going to give us even more benefit the sooner we take it. So we're going to grab that one. We've got a couple of pop-ups that have come up. I'll grab this one in a second, but let's take a look at blimps. Blimps are those deep space mining drones that we were trying to find out more about. Turns out they possess powerful mining lasers. And that's no good for us. That's kind of a problem. They might be old, but we should really make sure that we don't get too close to them. I'm gonna say understood. And now, officially, we finished the first contact protocol. We have found out that this is a series of old mining drones. We don't have information about them because we're not in the system where they exist, but we might want to find out a little bit more before we engage them. Those mining lasers have me thinking there might be something we could do to give us an edge on our robotic enemies and antagonists in that system there. And lastly, we've got something that's actually very important. And a lot of new players are sort of confused about what this concept is, and it's not really explained very clearly to them, but you should be very aware because it can give you massive, massive, powerful bonuses if you follow this quest. This is an announcement of our precursor. There was some kind of empire that left small traces around the galaxy that they used to exist, this gigantic empire known as the Cybrex. They were machines that had some kind of collective consciousness that connected them and probably lived about 600,000 years ago out there in space. We've only just learned about them, but there seem to be at least a couple of artifacts strewn around that may tell us more about who they were, or maybe where their home system was, where they used to live. This is going to add a situation to the situation log known as the precursors. In Stellaris, you will randomly be assigned a precursor from a set list. There's actually a lot of them. And you can explore more and find out more about your precursor. If you complete this quest, it will give you gigantic, gigantic bonuses. It is worth doing. Just telling you straight out. Discover more about your precursor, find out more about them, find these artifacts, which may be located in some of these anomalies that we found around the galaxy. You may even get some clues to which one of these anomalies may hold artifacts of your precursor. And I would highly recommend you pursue them, for sure. All right, that's the end of today's tutorial. We are going to look at, in the next tutorial, how to manage planets. We're going to look a little bit at habitability. You'll notice that here at Asterion, we've got 2 planets here, but one's green and one's red, which is a little bit strange. That's unlike Alpha Centauri 3 that we're colonizing right now. And in that tutorial, we're going to take a look all about planets, how to manage them, what things you should keep track of, and hey, If you're finding the tutorial helpful, don't forget to leave a like. Let me know if there's anything that I haven't explained well enough that you'd like a little bit more explanation of down in the comments below, and I'll respond to your comments as well. And hey, subscribe to the channel if you really enjoy the content as well. We're gonna be looking at a couple different games in addition to Stellaris over the next couple of weeks, likely. And if you don't know already, I also stream over on Twitch, where I'm making Stellaris streams 3 days a week. So I hope to see you there. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day. What's going on, everybody? It's Max the Catfish, and today we are here with episode 4 in our beginner's tutorial series for Stellaris here in 2022. If you haven't seen the last 3 episodes, we have taken a look at everything from your first steps in space to what the different resources are and how we use them, everything from how to use edicts and how to gain traditions using Unity. And today we're taking a look at how do we actually administrate the more planetary side of our empire, if you will. We've got a whole bunch of planets out there for us to gather, but when we have them, what do we do with them, right? We're gonna find out today. Let's jump into it. So we've got a planet here, Alpha Centauri 3, that's almost fully colonized. 1 year more, and we should have a pretty good grasp on the planet at that point. But while that's been colonizing, a couple things have been happening on Earth. And I explained in the last tutorial, I have not been playing Stellaris the right way. I've been explaining a lot of concepts to you, but I've been glossing over a lot of things, and I haven't come to the full explanation of everything that there is, because there is a lot to explain. But we've got Earth here, right? It's been our home colony and our home, really, of the human species for as long as we can remember. In the outliner, we've got a couple of icons here that are giving us a little bit of an alert. They're saying, hey, something's wrong. Something's wrong on Earth, especially this red one. Something's wrong on Earth, and you need to go and make sure that you fix it. That's your job, right? As leader of the Earth and human species, right? And so I clicked on the Earth little button here on the outliner, and this brought us to the planetary administration panel. Now, when you're playing your game in Stellaris, you should take a look at this way sooner than I have in this tutorial series, but I put it off because there's a lot to learn about the game and some of the concepts before you start working on planets, because there's a lot of numbers, there's a lot of buttons, there's a lot of things you should be aware of. Let's start at the top. We've talked a lot already about the habitability of planets. A planet's habitability determines how productive and happy your species are living on that planet. You could send humans down to a living hellhole that's just horribly inhabitable. It's got terrible monsters, it doesn't have any oxygen, but they won't necessarily be particularly happy there. And as their happiness decreases, it may turn to a revolt. They may revolt against your empire, or leave the planet altogether, or just die. That's up to you to make smart decisions about how you're choosing and picking the planets that your species should live on. Next to that is the planetary size. I explained in a previous tutorial that this determines the maximum number of districts that you can build on that planet. Districts are this panel here in the middle left side of the planetary view. And for you already, the game will create a bunch of districts on your home planet, but new colonies will have no districts built, and they're up to you to decide how you'd like to build them. In my opinion, it makes a lot of sense for you to specialize planets into a specific thing, right? It would be really good for you to have a planet just based on producing energy and a planet just based on producing minerals. But when you're first starting out, obviously that's not very possible. You have to meet the needs of your entire civilization, your entire galactic empire, and then you can start the specialization of planets over time. In my experience, your capital planet starts as a jack of all trades, and then slowly but surely, very carefully, you can start specializing it to do something very specific if you'd like to. Planetary traits are found just below your size and your habitability here. And sometimes those traits are positive, sometimes they're negative. If we take a look at Alpha Centauri, we saw that there's actually both a positive trait, which we found from an anomaly, and a negative trait, which is this is not the place to make food, right? We can already tell that because the maximum number of districts, of agriculture districts that we can build on this planet is 3. That means, in effect, that the planet's Earth, the minerals in the planet are really weak. They're not really suitable for producing food. Don't produce food on this planet. It's as easy as that. But going back to Earth, on the right side, let's take a look at this panel. This is a really quick indication of how good are you playing the game. I'm playing it pretty badly actually right now because we're in tutorial mode. We can see some red numbers here, and that is an indication that I'm not doing something right. Yellow numbers, we talked about, are kind of like, it's not that you're doing a bad thing, but you should be doing a little bit better, right? And it is a really quick indication of how you can fix some of these things on your planet. Every single planet, you should give this panel some attention and understand what's going on. Every so often, like every 30 minutes, every hour, just check in on your planets. Even in the outliner, you can really quickly see what their progress is, and just check in on them and see what's going on. So let's start at the top of here with stability. Stability is an indication of how stable is your population on your planet. This is a combination of everything from the habitability to their happiness to do they have consumer goods, right? The resource that we talked about that is like the luxury goods for your population. Do they have enough amenities, which are things like drinkable water and nice roads and public transportation? Are you keeping up on these things? Or just things like an entertainment area for them to hang out and let off steam so that it's not all about work, right? All of these elements feed into your stability, including crime, which can grow on a planet that is unhappy. If you're not producing enough places for people to have amenities, or if you're not producing enough housing for your population, crime will start to grow. People are living on the streets. They're living in situations that are destitute. And that's going to grow a criminal population. That is going to create less stability on your planet. If crime grows too high or stability drops too low, you may see your planets in all-out revolt against you, or may have riots or terrible things happen on them. So you should make sure that you keep your population happy and on planets that are actually habitable for them, right? So we talked about crime. Housing is our next number here, and this just shows how much housing do we have available for new population. If you are lacking housing, this number will be negative, and that means you need to make houses for your pops, or they're going to be quite upset with you. Housing comes from a series or a combination of districts and some buildings. Some buildings feature housing on them as well. But districts are typically the main way that you gain housing. If you scroll over any of these districts, all of them produce an amount of housing and all of them produce an amount of jobs as well, which is what keeps your population employed. Your agriculture, mining districts, and generator districts by default produce 2 housing and produce 2 jobs. So you could just build on a perfect world. You could build all of these districts and you'd have an equal number of houses and jobs. Your city districts produce 5 housing, which is a lot more, and produce 1 job. So they are used to make up for a lack of housing if you've got too many jobs on your planet, but not enough housing. They also unlock a building slot, which I'm going to cover in just a little bit. But just know that city districts are a really quick way of fixing a housing issue if you have a housing issue on your planet. Industrial districts, similar to the ones that preceded them, they have 2 housing and they've got 2 jobs. 1 job that is used to turn minerals into consumer goods, and 1 job that is used to turn minerals into alloys. We're going to touch on jobs right in a second here, but you'll notice that I've got actually a problem. I've got no available jobs. I'm lacking jobs for our population to perform. Not only that, I have 2 pops that don't have jobs, and I should probably do something to fix that. A really quick way to fix this is by creating a new district, right? And by creating a new district, we can really quickly get these population that don't have jobs into jobs for them. Now, we talked a little bit about specialization and how Alpha Centauri is a perfect planet to be specialized into generator districts. So when I'm looking at Earth, I probably don't want to build a generator district. I think that would be a bad move. I could build a mining district, but I have an income of 43 mining already. Like that's pretty good. I could build an agriculture district, and it wouldn't be a bad thing to do necessarily, but maybe the better thing to do is to look at the fact that we have only a income of 2 consumer goods, which is quite low. And remember that the industrial district turns minerals and turns them into consumer goods and turns them into alloys. So we could create a new industrial district, take from our massive surplus of minerals and generate some consumer goods and some alloys by doing so. I think that would be a really smart move. Alternatively to building an industrial district is we could build buildings. Now, you have a number of building slots up to, I believe, what is this? This is 12 total. And we could instead build buildings which have sometimes similar roles to your districts and sometimes kind of competing roles to your districts instead. You'll notice that we could build on this planet an alloy foundry. And the alloy foundry doesn't produce any housing, but it produces 2 jobs that turn minerals into alloys. That's pretty juicy, honestly. If I really wanted to get more alloys, and I always do, I would build an alloy foundries there. Or potentially, maybe, because we have already 5 extra housing on this planet, maybe I want civilian industries. It's going to create 2 artisan jobs that produce consumer goods by consuming minerals. That would be pretty sweet. And this could be a planet where we really focus in on the production of consumer goods and alloys, maybe both or maybe just one. I think that would be a really smart place to start. So I'm going to build a civilian industries on this planet. At the bottom here, of course, we have how long it takes to build a building and how many minerals it takes to build it. Your buildings and your districts are created from minerals, so keep that in mind. Minerals, I told you, are the building blocks of your planets and of your empire, so always, always, always keep an eye on your income of minerals. But we're going to build a civilian industries, which is going to take 360 so days. Let's drop down now and take a look at a few last things on planets. In the middle here is your planetary production. It shows you what your planet produces. Pretty straightforward. This is really nitpicky. It's really looking at like how many energy credits are you creating? How many minerals are you creating? But you can always look in the upper left-hand corner at these resources and just see that at a quick glance. Remember, resources that are produced on a planet are shared with your entire empire, so you don't have to transfer any resources from one planet to the other. But it is good for you to specialize planets because you're going to get a massive benefit in doing so. So that's what Earth has got going on. Let's take a look at the population tab for 1 second. The population tab tells you how are your population divided by strata and what jobs are they actually performing. On the bottom right-hand side, we've got the fact that we only have humans on this planet, but if we had multiple species, we would see a bunch of different species take up a percentage of the pie chart, depending on how many lived on the planet. Right now, it's 100% human. On the left side, we've got the jobs available on this planet. You'll see that one of these numbers is red because we have 2 workers. This is the lowest strata, the lowest on the tier of employees that are unemployed. And we have each of the jobs that are available on this planet, made available by the districts that you have and the buildings that you've built on that planet there. So we've got 6 farmers that are producing 8.3 food. We've got 4 miners that are producing 5.5 minerals. And all of these jobs are full up. There's no extra vacancy. There's no extra availability. There are times, there will be many times actually, most of the time, that you have more jobs than you have workers. And you can actually allocate workers specifically to specific jobs by expanding the drop-down arrow and using the plus and minus to increase or decrease the number of jobs available in that role. So this is a hypothetical, I can't really show it right now, but let's say that we had way too much food and we really needed miners. I could
А мне тоже. לא.
אבל
תספרי.
לא, אתה לא הולך לשם ב-11:30?
אני לא הולך שם ב-11:30.
למה?
תפלו.
לא, זה מאוחר מאוד.
זה מאוחר מאוד.
תורידי את הבניה את זה.
פשוט בניה את זה. כאן עכשיו. אני יושב כל הזמן לקום.
ככה, יצאת לך גם.
אבל הוא בכיס שלי, אני לא אמרתי לו. מה אתה אומר?